Now, it'll be very irresponsible for me to sit here and tell you guys I have the cure for what we know as duck feet. And it'll be wrong for me to sit here and boldly tell you guys that we can fix this quote unquote problem with 3 easy exercises. Individuals who have it and don't have it often see it as a physical deformity that needs to be corrected immediately. With the exception of people recovering from surgeries and injuries, neurological disorders and events, naturally occurring degenerative changes within the body, or even late stages of pregnancy and drastic weight gain. Some people are born with their feet pointing more outwards or have other anatomical builds that make them more prone to it. And that's not necessarily an issue. It shouldn't be viewed as one. But it does become an issue when anyone with this foot posture, whether it's natural or as a result of something, starts walking like this or this. Rather than our main focus being on muscles and exercises that may or may not alter the anatomy of the foot, let's focus on correcting the walking. And one result of walking in an ideal pattern is the foot going back to an ideal position. Now, when we start walking in an ideal pattern, it's going to put us in positions and utilize muscles that we may not be used to from walking in a non-ideal pattern. And that is where we start focusing on specific muscles in certain exercises to build up the strength and endurance. Even if the walking pattern is a result of weak muscles, there are still alterations we can make to the gait that make for healthier habits, at least until the endurance and strength builds up. Now let's look at the phases of walking. For as simple as walking may seem, it's actually a fairly complex movement, and it's going to feel weird having to think about walking. But the way we walk affects the rest of our body. A change in our walking pattern can cause a chain of events, even vice versa. A change in structure, or even the natural build of a structure, can change the way we walk, whether it's a form of protection, compensation, or just laziness. Now let's go over each step, literally and metaphorically. The first event is when we strike our heel onto the ground. From there, we smoothly rock forward, flat onto the foot. Then the opposite leg swings and the whole body rocks forward, which means that leg has to support the whole body. So for a good heel strike, you need a good amount of dorsiflexion, which is basically when you bring your toes closer to your shin. So I want you guys to point your foot outwards and do this movement, then try the same thing with it pointed forward. You'll notice it's a lot more comfortable and goes a lot further when you point it forward. But you don't even have to force it forward. If you dorsiflex your foot a good amount and land on the middle of your heel, then it'll straighten out. Look at this amount of dorsiflexion compared to this much. And most of the weight is focused on the outside of the foot, which in turn will put you in this position, which is not the best way to hold yourself up. And also why people who walk like this also end up with back and hip problems. As you can see in this pic, the feet are also pretty far apart, which also plays a big role in how we walk and what causes us to hobble. Even if your feet are closer together like in this type of walk, once again, if you have that lack of dorsiflexion on that initial heel contact, you'll end up right in this position, which in turn isn't the best for your hips in the long run. This weirdly perfect stock photo shows a man with some type of duck foot in this, yet he's showing great mechanics. His base isn't too wide, and he's dorsiflexing his foot a good amount to where he's striking right in the middle of that heel, which will probably lead to you standing in this type of position, which I'll take any day over this one. Now let's look at the next two phases. Let's just call it the push off and the swing. This is after the opposite leg has already swung and is getting ready for heel contact. Now, if you guys remember, when we heel strike, we want to smoothly rock forward flat onto that foot. And one of the main drivers of that movement is that back foot pushing off. Now, we talked about dorsiflexion, which is pointing your toes upward towards your shin. Now let's talk about plantar flexion, which is the opposite, basically pointing your toes. And when we're pushing off when walking, we want that back foot to plantar flex a good amount. Not the most we can, but just a good amount. That way, the path of our foot and leg can stay straight. Just look at the direction that back foot and knee is pointing towards compared to this. Once we push off, we want to then swing that leg straight forward while dorsiflexing the foot. Now, it's important that we dorsiflex the foot for a couple reasons. Number one is so you don't trip on the ground. Number two is going to help us stay in a forward direction. Like I said earlier, if you dorsiflex your foot a good amount, it's going to automatically straighten out the foot, and thus begins another cycle. Hey, if you made it this far, thank you so much for tuning in to my first official PT-related YouTube video. This was actually a video that I had made about 2 years ago while I was still in PT school. It was a philosophy that I had learned and taught to people before PT school. And when looking back at my drafts, I realized, hey, I still teach this philosophy, and I didn't want the video to go to waste in the draft. So I decided to take it to YouTube because honestly, this is far too long and boring for Instagram or just TikTok in general. And, I want to educate the people and do more in-depth stuff based on what I do, of course. Now, I mentioned in the video that there are exercises to help maintain this type of gait style. I wanted to see what the interactions with this video were first before I make that part 2. So I'm going to be very, very modest and say, hey, if I get 3 comments or even 2 comments, you know what? I'll make the second video and just drop it when I feel like it, because I'm going to feel real incomplete if I don't make that second video. But once again, thank you for tuning in so much, and more to come.